I held out my hand to shake, and that simple gesture cost a company $2.1 billion. My name is Marcus Sheffard. I'm 53, and until 3 weeks ago, I was managing partner at Patriot Ridge Capital here in Norfolk. If you've never heard of us, that's by design. We don't advertise on billboards or sponsor golf tournaments. We move quietly, write big checks, and expect two things in return: smart management and basic human decency. The chairman of Norfolk Defense Industries had a different idea about decency. Before I explain how one handshake destroyed an entire board of directors, let me back up and tell you how I got to that room in the first place. I spent 25 years working construction before I ever set foot in a boardroom. Started as a laborer right out of high school in 1988, working the shipyard expansion projects that were booming in Norfolk back then. The Cold War was winding down, but the Navy still needed ships, and Hampton Roads was where they got built. My dad, Frank Sheffard, was a site supervisor who'd worked construction his whole life. He taught me everything about building, not just how to pour concrete or frame walls, but how to read people. "Son," he used to say while we ate lunch on a steel beam 40 feet up, "you can tell everything about a man by watching him lay foundation. Some guys cut corners when they think nobody's looking. Those guys build houses that fall down. But the dangerous ones are the supervisors who know their crew is cutting corners and look the other way because it keeps the schedule tight." Dad was old school, came up through the ranks when Norfolk was still a working man's town, before the defense contractors moved their headquarters into glass towers downtown. He believed in doing things right the first time, treating your crew with respect, and never asking a man to do something you wouldn't do yourself. The shipyard workers respected him because he'd spent 20 years swinging a hammer before he ever carried a clipboard. In those days, Norfolk wasn't the polished military town you see now. It was rough around the edges, full of sailors on shore leave and shipyard workers who knew how to build things with their hands. The neighborhoods around the shipyard were working class through and through. Houses built in the 1940s for Navy families, corner stores that cashed paychecks, bars where you could get a beer and a burger for $5. I learned to work in that environment. Started carrying my dad's tools when I was 12, spending summers on job sites while other kids went to camp. By the time I graduated high school, I could read blueprints, operate a crane, and spot a safety violation from 50 yards away. More importantly, I understood the culture. Construction crews are like military units. There's a hierarchy, but it's based on competence and respect, not just titles. The big lesson came when I was 20, working a high-rise project in downtown Norfolk. We were putting up a mixed-use development, offices on top, retail on the ground floor, the kind of project that was supposed to revitalize the downtown core. I was running rebar on the 12th floor when I noticed something wrong with the concrete pour on the floor below. The mix looked thin, and the crew was moving too fast, not giving it time to set properly. I went to the floor supervisor, a guy named Pete Kowalski who'd been with the company for 15 years. Told him what I'd seen. Pete just shrugged. "Schedule's tight," he said. "We pour today, or we're behind for the rest of the job." When I pressed him about structural integrity, he got irritated. "You're rebar, not engineering. Do your job and let me do mine." That night, I told my dad what I'd seen. He got quiet for a long time, then asked me what I thought we should do. I said I didn't know. Pete was the supervisor, and I was just labor. Dad nodded slowly. "That's where most men stop thinking," he said. "They figure someone else is responsible, so they can stop worrying about it. But son, when you see something that's wrong, you've got a choice. You can keep your mouth shut and hope nothing bad happens, or you can speak up and deal with the consequences." The next morning, Dad and I went to the job site together. He walked the 11th floor, checking the concrete that had set overnight, took out his pocket knife and scraped at the surface, testing the hardness. Then he made some calls. By noon, there were 3 inspectors on site and a very unhappy general contractor. The concrete failed every test. The entire floor had to be torn out and repoured, which cost the company $200,000 and put them 3 weeks behind schedule. Pete Kowalski got fired, along with 2 other supervisors who'd signed off on the pour. I thought I was going to get fired too, but the opposite happened. The general contractor, a tough old guy named Bill Morrison, called me into his trailer. "Your dad says you spotted the problem." He said, "That right?" When I nodded, he leaned back in his chair. "Most guys your age would have kept quiet. Didn't want to cause trouble. What made you different?" I told him about what my dad had taught me, that the person who sees the problem becomes responsible for it, whether they want to be or not. Bill nodded. "Your dad's a smart man. I'm promoting you to crew chief. Don't make me regret it." That was my first lesson in how power really works in the construction business. It's not about the title on your hard hat or where your trailer is parked. It's about being willing to make the hard decisions when everyone else is looking the other way. The guys who move up in construction aren't necessarily the strongest or the smartest. They are the ones who take responsibility when something goes wrong, even if it's not technically their job. Over the next 8 years, I worked my way up from crew chief to assistant supervisor to project manager. I learned every trade: electrical, plumbing, HVAC, finish work. More importantly, I learned how construction companies really made money and where they lost it. The money wasn't in the obvious places. It wasn't in skimping on materials or cutting labor costs. The real money was in planning, sequencing, and risk management. A good project manager could save a company hundreds of thousands by scheduling subcontractors efficiently and spotting problems before they became crises. A bad one could turn a profitable job into a disaster by making decisions that looked good on paper but fell apart in the real world. By 1996, I was running million-dollar projects and starting to understand something that would change my life. The construction business was really a financing business disguised as a building business. Every project was essentially a bet. The contractor borrowed money up front to buy materials and pay labor, then hoped to finish on time and under budget to turn a profit. The companies that thrived were the ones that understood capital, not just concrete. That's when everything changed. Dad died on a Tuesday morning in March 1997. Scaffold collapse at a government building renovation project in downtown Norfolk. The safety inspector found out later that the contractor had been using substandard connection bolts to save money, $12 per unit. That's what my father's life was worth to some pencil pusher who'd never climbed higher than his office chair. The funeral was packed. Guys from every major construction company in Hampton Roads showed up, along with Navy personnel from projects Dad had supervised. They didn't come because they had to. They came because Frank Sheffard had earned their respect over 30 years of honest work. Standing at that graveside, listening to a chaplain talk about Dad's character and integrity, I made myself 2 promises. First, I'd learn how money really worked in this country, not the paycheck-to-paycheck kind I grew up with, but the real money that decided whether projects got built with good materials or cheap ones. Second, I'd never let someone else's corner cutting put good people at risk. The wrongful death settlement was enough to put me through school if I was smart about it. I took my construction savings and enrolled at Old Dominion University, studying finance during the day and working job sites at night. It took me 6 years to get through undergrad, but I graduated debt-free, and with something most finance majors didn't have, I knew how things actually got built. The MBA took another 2 years of night classes while I ran construction projects during the day. My professors thought I was crazy. "Why are you killing yourself with manual labor when you could be interning at investment banks?" they'd ask. But I understood something they didn't. If I was going to invest other people's money in construction and manufacturing companies, I needed to know the difference between a well-run operation and one that was cutting corners. By 2005, I had my MBA and 8 years of management experience in commercial construction. I was making good money as a project manager, but I could see the handwriting on the wall. The construction boom was getting frothy. Companies were bidding jobs at break-even margins just to keep their crews busy. Developers were putting up buildings they couldn't afford, using leverage they didn't understand. That's when I met Wade Cooper, a former Navy finance officer who was working for a regional bank that specialized in construction lending. Wade had the banking background I lacked, and I had the operational knowledge he needed. We started talking about forming our own investment firm, one that actually understood how construction projects succeeded or failed. The idea was simple. Instead of evaluating deals from a conference room, we'd get our hands dirty, walk the job sites, talk to the crews, look at the materials being used. Most importantly, we'd evaluate the character of the people running the show. Dad always said you could tell everything about a man by watching him lay foundation. We figured the same principle applied to business. Patriot Ridge Capital opened in 2007 in a 2-room office above Anderson Hardware on Granby Street. The timing couldn't have been worse. The financial crisis hit just as we were raising our first fund, and the construction industry cratered. But that gave us an opportunity. While bigger firms were running scared, we were buying distressed assets from people who understood building but not financing. Our first real deal was a bankrupt shipyard in Portsmouth that specialized in Navy vessel maintenance. The previous owners had over-leveraged themselves trying to expand too fast. But the core business was solid. The yard had skilled workers, good relationships with Navy procurement, and facilities that would cost $50 million to rebuild. We bought it for $12 million and spent 6 months walking the yard every day, talking to welders and electricians and hull technicians. These weren't guys with college degrees, but they knew their trade better than any MBA ever would. The problem wasn't their competence. It was management that treated them like replaceable parts. We kept the entire workforce and promoted 3 supervisors to management positions. Guys who'd started as apprentices and worked their way up through 20 years of honest labor. Within 18 months, the yard was profitable again. More importantly, it had become the kind of place where skilled workers wanted to stay. Word got around the defense contracting community. There was an investment firm in Norfolk that understood how blue-collar businesses really worked. We weren't interested in quick flips or financial engineering. We wanted to build companies that would still be operating in 20 years. By 2010, we were managing $300 million in assets, mostly focused on manufacturing and defense contracting throughout Virginia and North Carolina. Every deal followed the same pattern. We'd find well-run companies with good employees but poor financing, provide the capital they needed, and stay out of their way as long as they treated their people with respect. The integrity clause came after we got burned on a deal with a metal fabrication company in Raleigh. Their CEO seemed solid, former Marine, good operational background, strong relationships with his workforce. We did our due diligence, everything checked out, and we closed a $25 million investment to help them expand their Defense Department contracts. 3 months later, a video surfaced from an employee town hall. The CEO, thinking he was speaking off the record, told his workers that anyone who couldn't meet new productivity targets should find work somewhere that coddles mediocrity. He said their old way of doing business was too comfortable, and that comfortable people don't push hard enough to compete. The video went viral in manufacturing circles. Within weeks, it was showing up in union negotiations across the Southeast. Our client's reputation took a beating, and their best employees started looking for other jobs. We got our money back eventually, but the lesson was clear. Character matters more than credentials. That's when Wade and I wrote what we called the conduct integrity provision into every investment agreement. Simple language that said, if senior leadership engaged in documented behavior that materially harmed the company's reputation during our negotiations, we could withdraw our capital immediately. No penalties, no delays, no renegotiation rights, just gone. Most clients skimmed past it during contract reviews. Their lawyers called it boilerplate. But I'd learned from Dad that the best time to judge someone's character is when they think nobody important is watching. If a CEO couldn't treat employees with basic respect during the honeymoon period of a new investment, what would happen when the pressure really got turned up? By 2015, Patriot Ridge was managing $800 million in assets. We'd built a reputation throughout the Mid-Atlantic defense and manufacturing community. We weren't the biggest investment firm, but we were known for 2 things. We understood operational businesses, and we kept our word. When we said we'd provide capital for expansion, we delivered. When we said we'd stay out of day-to-day operations, we meant it. But there was a third thing we were known for, though most people didn't realize it at the time. We had zero tolerance for executives who thought their position gave them license to treat working people like dirt. We'd walked away from 3 deals over the years because leadership couldn't demonstrate basic human decency. Each time, we took some heat from our limited partners who thought we were being too rigid. The truth was, we were protecting them. Companies with toxic leadership always fail eventually. Maybe not in the first quarter or even the first year, but the rot spreads. Good employees leave, quality suffers, and eventually the numbers catch up with the culture. We just preferred to find out who we were dealing with before we wrote the check, not after. Norfolk Defense Industries entered our orbit in late 2018, right when they were realizing their previous strategy wasn't working. Norfolk Defense Industries wasn't a bad company, just a poorly managed one. Defense manufacturing, shipyard operations, solid contracts with the Navy and Marine Corps. But their previous CEO had spent 5 years making acquisitions like he was collecting vintage cars, expensive, flashy, and completely unnecessary for the core business. The debt load was crushing them. They'd leveraged everything twice over to buy companies that didn't fit their wheelhouse. A software firm in Virginia Beach that developed logistics apps, a small aerospace manufacturer in Richmond that made specialized components for satellites, a construction company in Roanoke that specialized in government buildings. None of it made strategic sense, but it looked impressive in investor presentations. By the time they reached out to Patriot Ridge, Norfolk Defense was burning through $30 million a quarter just servicing debt. Their credit lines were tapped out. Vendors were demanding cash on delivery. The Pentagon was making noises about reviewing their contractor status because of financial stability concerns. They needed $2.1 billion, and they needed it fast. The numbers weren't terrible once you looked past the acquisition spree. Their core shipbuilding business in Portsmouth was profitable. They had long-term contracts with reliable payment terms. The problem was leadership, specifically Bradley Worthington, the board chairman who'd rubber-stamped every deal that got them into this mess. Bradley came from old Norfolk money. His grandfather had started a shipping operation in the 1940s that eventually became a fortune in maritime real estate. The family had been involved in defense contracting since the Korean War, mostly as a silent partner providing capital to companies that actually knew how to build ships and aircraft. Bradley inherited the chairmanship when his father died in 2015, along with enough stock to control board decisions. He'd never worked a day in manufacturing, never made payroll, never had to explain to a room full of workers why their overtime was being cut. But he had an MBA from Wharton and the kind of confidence that comes from never having to worry about money. The first time I met Bradley was during our initial due diligence session 6 months before the board meeting that changed everything. He walked into our conference room on Granby Street like he was doing us a favor. Expensive suit, expensive watch, the kind of handshake that lasted exactly 2 seconds longer than necessary because he wanted to make sure you noticed the Patek Philippe. "Gentlemen," he said, "though Wade and I were the only people in the room, I appreciate Patriot Ridge's interest in our opportunity." Our opportunity. Like they were offering us a chance to buy stock in Apple, circa 1985. I spent 20 minutes walking him through our investment criteria, our governance requirements, our expectations for transparency and accountability. He nodded at all the right moments, asked a few questions about timeline and structure, seemed engaged. But I caught him checking his phone twice during our conversation, and when I mentioned the conduct integrity provision, he waved it off without reading it. "Standard language," he said. "Our legal team will handle the details." That should have been my second warning. We spent the next 4 months in detailed due diligence. Norfolk Defense's books were a mess, but not criminally so. Just the way things get when nobody's been paying attention to the fundamentals. Too much debt, too many overhead costs, too many executives who'd been hired because they knew someone rather than because they could do the job. But the core business was solid. Their shipyard in Portsmouth employed 800 skilled workers who knew their trade. Their contracts with the Navy were secure for the next decade. Their facilities were well maintained, and their safety record was better than industry average. With proper capital structure and competent leadership, Norfolk Defense could be profitable again. The catch was Bradley. Every conversation reinforced my impression that he saw this deal as a personal favor we were doing for him, not a business transaction between equals. When we asked about board changes, he got defensive. When we suggested bringing in outside management consultants, he insisted their current team could handle it. When we pushed for monthly reporting requirements, he complained about micromanagement. Wade started calling him the inheritance after our third meeting. "Guy's never earned anything in his life," Wade said. "Doesn't understand why anyone would question his judgment." But the deal made sense despite Bradley, not because of him. Norfolk Defense's problems were fixable with enough capital and the right oversight. We structured the commitment as $2.1 billion in staged tranches tied to specific operational milestones and governance reforms. The board would add 2 independent directors with experience in defense manufacturing. They'd hire a new CEO with a track record of turning around leveraged companies. And Bradley would step back from day-to-day operations, remaining as chairman but with limited authority. The conduct integrity provision was non-negotiable. After our experience in Raleigh, I insisted on language that gave us clean exit rights if leadership behavior created reputational risk during negotiations. Bradley's lawyers tried to soften it twice. Both times I told them to put it back the way we wrote it or find another investor. The final language was crystal clear. Documented conduct by senior leadership that materially harms the reputational standing of the company or its incoming leadership during negotiations allows for immediate withdrawal of capital commitment without penalty or delay. Bradley signed it without reading it. I know because I was watching his eyes when he flipped to that page. He spent maybe 10 seconds scanning 3 paragraphs of text that would ultimately cost him his career. But that was Bradley's style. He was used to signing things other people had already decided, used to having problems solved by lawyers and accountants while he focused on the important work of being important. The new CEO they selected was Cameron Foster, a 41-year-old turnaround specialist who'd successfully restructured 2 defense contractors in the previous decade. Good track record, solid references, practical instincts for operational efficiency. During our background calls, 3 different people described him as smart and practical, which in my experience usually means someone who can tell the difference between what sounds good in a boardroom and what actually works in the real world. Cameron had spent 12 years as a Navy supply officer before transitioning to civilian consulting. He understood military procurement, knew how to work with Pentagon bureaucracy, and had enough operational experience to spot bullshit from a mile away. More importantly, he had that rare combination of confidence and humility that comes from making real decisions under real pressure. The transition announcement was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in December. Full board meeting, live webcast for employees and investors, carefully choreographed to project confidence and stability. This wasn't just an internal announcement. It was a message to the entire defense contracting community that Norfolk Defense was back on solid ground. I flew into Norfolk International at 6:30 a.m. and drove straight to Norfolk Defense's headquarters downtown. December in Norfolk is perfect weather. Clear skies, 45 degrees, the kind of morning that makes you appreciate living somewhere without real winters. The city was just waking up as I drove through downtown, early commuters heading to glass towers that reflected the sunrise off the Elizabeth River. Norfolk Defense's building was exactly what you'd expect from a defense contractor trying to project stability and success. 30-story glass and steel tower, marble lobby with company logos etched in bronze, security desk that looked like it belonged in a Pentagon facility. The lobby had all the standard corporate theater, stock ticker showing real-time prices, promotional video showing smiling workers in hard hats and lab coats, carefully staged shots of manufacturing floors and testing facilities. The receptionist, a polished woman in her 40s who'd clearly been briefed on VIP treatment, gave me the full professional smile. "Welcome to Norfolk Defense, Mr. Sheffard. Someone from Investor Relations will be down to escort you." The escort turned out to be Lance Morrison, a nervous young guy in an expensive suit that didn't quite fit right. He couldn't have been more than 25, probably hired straight out of some MBA program to handle the interface between Norfolk Defense and the financial community. "Big day today," I said as we rode the elevator to the executive floor, testing the waters. "Definitely," he replied, "maybe a little too quickly. Lot of moving pieces, but everything's coming together." The executive floor had that hushed, expensive feel that comes from thick carpet and serious money. Framed photos lined the hallways, past CEOs shaking hands with admirals and senators, ribbon-cutting ceremonies at new facilities, awards from industry associations and military procurement offices. The kind of corporate history that's meant to reassure investors that this is a company with deep roots and important relationships. Lance led me past several smaller conference rooms to the main boardroom at the end of the hall. Double glass doors, cameras already mounted and ready, red lights blinking to indicate they were live. Through the glass, I could see the room was set up for maximum impact. "They asked me to bring you these when you arrived," Lance said, handing me a carefully arranged bouquet of white lilies and eucalyptus. "For the announcement, optics." I took the flowers, noting the irony. Norfolk Defense had specifically requested that Patriot Ridge sponsor the refreshments and decorations for the announcement as a gesture of partnership. Now they wanted me to carry them in like I was part of the catering staff. Inside the boardroom, the key players were already assembled and clearly in their element. Bradley Worthington held court at the head of the table, every inch the powerful chairman in his charcoal suit and burgundy tie. Early 60s, silver hair perfectly styled, the kind of presence that commanded attention without requiring effort. He was in conversation with 2 board members, using the low, confident tone that successful executives develop when they're used to having people hang on their words. Cameron Foster, the incoming CEO, sat about halfway down the table on the right side, flipping through a printed presentation deck. He looked younger than his 41 years, which probably helped explain why Bradley felt comfortable treating him like a junior employee, rather than the person who would soon be running the company. Dennis Coleman, the CFO, was deep in his materials at the opposite end from Bradley. Dennis was the kind of finance guy who actually understood the numbers rather than just presenting them. Mid-50s, methodical, the type who'd probably been running scenarios for months about how this deal would impact every aspect of operations. The communications team was setting up in the back, adjusting camera angles and testing audio levels. 3 different cameras to capture every angle, one focused on Bradley for opening remarks, one on Cameron for his CEO introduction, one wide shot for the Q&A session. When I walked in carrying the flowers, Bradley glanced up and gave me the kind of acknowledgement you might give a catering manager who'd arrived on time. Not rude exactly, but clearly categorizing me as support staff rather than a participant. Perfect timing, he said to the room in general, not to me specifically. Set those on the credenza and we'll get started. I walked around the table toward Cameron instead. He looked up as I approached, and I could see he was nervous about more than just his presentation. There was something in his expression that suggested he understood the stakes better than his chairman did. I shifted the flowers to my left arm and extended my right hand toward Cameron. This was supposed to be a simple gesture of welcome and support. Instead, it became the moment that changed everything. "Welcome to Norfolk Defense," I said clearly. "I'm Marcus." That's when Bradley turned our way, saw my outstretched hand, and decided to show everyone in the room exactly who he thought belonged at his table. "I don't shake hands with people like you," Bradley announced, loud enough for every microphone in the room to catch every syllable. The words hung in the air like a challenge. The reaction was immediate and telling. A board member to Bradley's right gave a quick snicker. Someone halfway down the table made that nervous laugh people do when they know something's wrong but don't want to be the first to call it out. Cameron looked at my extended hand, then at Bradley, then down at his presentation materials, like they contained escape instructions. He didn't move to shake my hand, didn't correct the chairman, didn't say a word, just stared at his agenda and waited for the moment to pass. I didn't drop my hand immediately. For maybe 3 seconds, I kept it extended while Bradley's smile faltered slightly. He seemed genuinely annoyed that I hadn't immediately apologized and shuffled away like good help should. "I'm here as instructed," I said, keeping my voice level enough for the microphones to pick up every word clearly. "Then stand where you're told," he replied without missing a beat. "This meeting is for executives." I lowered my hand on my own terms, not his, and placed the flowers on the table at the edge of his sight line. Then I walked to the empty chair at the far end of the boardroom table and sat down. "Let's begin," Bradley said, already turning toward the main screen. The first slide appeared, Norfolk Defense Industries logo and the date, followed by leadership transition and capital structure update. As the second slide came up, I decided it was time to clarify a few things. "Before you go further," I said, cutting through his presentation momentum, "there's something you should know." Bradley turned slowly, like I just interrupted a church service. "We're not taking input from support staff during this session. You can give your notes to investor relations afterward." I met his stare directly. "If you're refusing to shake my hand, then by tomorrow morning, $2.1 billion will no longer be part of this deal." The silence that followed wasn't movie silence. It was real silence. The kind where you can hear the building's ventilation system and someone's phone vibrating against the table. Dennis Coleman looked up from his materials with the expression of someone who just realized he might have been making incorrect assumptions. "We should confirm final authorization from the funding source," he said carefully. "That's being handled," Bradley snapped, clearly annoyed by the interruption. "From the Capital Controller specifically," Dennis corrected, glancing meaningfully in my direction. All eyes turned toward me. I checked my watch, a small gesture that felt like adjusting a pressure gauge. "That would be me," I said simply. Bradley stared. Really looked at me for the first time since I'd entered the room. Not at the flowers I'd been carrying, not at the seat I'd been assigned, but at my face. "You're saying you control the funding." "I'm saying I'm the managing partner at Patriot Ridge Capital, authorized to deploy or withdraw the entire commitment." That's when Dennis brought up the clause. He flipped through his folder and tapped a specific page. "There's one provision we need to acknowledge. The conduct provision." You could feel the energy in the room change. Directors started flipping through pages, looking for language they'd probably skimmed past during initial reviews. "What exactly does it say?" Cameron asked, finally participating in the conversation that would determine his future. Dennis read directly from the document. "Documented conduct by senior leadership that materially harms the reputational standing of the company or its incoming leadership during negotiations allows for immediate capital withdrawal." Bradley waved dismissively. "Standard boilerplate language. It was specifically revised," Dennis said quietly. "Patriot Ridge requested that exact wording." Every head in the room turned toward me again. "I was concerned about behavior," I said simply. During the 10-minute break that followed, I stepped into a quiet alcove near the elevators and made one phone call. Wade picked up on the second ring. "Execute the withdrawal," I said. "Full amount, effective immediately. All $2.1 billion, all of it." Conduct provision documentation available. Understood. We'll execute now. When I returned to the boardroom, they were trying to pretend nothing had changed. Bradley was back at his presentation, talking about liquidity runways and growth projections, all built on an assumption that was already gone. Phones around the table started buzzing. Dennis went pale as he read his screen. The primary commitment has been withdrawn, he said slowly. Bradley shot to his feet. That's not possible. We have agreements. The clause allows it, I said calmly. You created the conditions on camera. What happened next wasn't dramatic. Real boardrooms don't stage coups like in movies. They follow procedure. But underneath the formal language, something simpler was happening. Self-preservation. Within 2 hours, Bradley Worthington was placed on administrative leave. Cameron Foster's appointment was suspended. The business press had the story by afternoon. The stock dropped 31% in after-eras trading. 6 months later, Norfolk Defense filed for Chapter 11. Their best employees had already found jobs with competitors. Their Navy contracts were under review. Bradley never worked in defense contracting again. A year after that, I got a call from Cameron Foster. He'd landed on his feet as COO of a smaller defense manufacturer in South Carolina. I should have shaken your hand, he said. I knew it was wrong when it happened, but I was thinking about my career instead of doing the right thing. Sometimes that's how you learn, I told him. People assume power announces itself with corner offices and reserved parking. That day, it walked into a boardroom carrying flowers and no nameplate. Bradley saw what he wanted to see. Someone to dismiss, someone beneath notice. He learned the most expensive way possible that the quiet person at the end of the table sometimes holds all the cards. My dad used to say you could tell everything about a man by watching him lay foundation. Bradley Worthington never learned that lesson. Some foundations look solid from the outside, but when you apply real pressure, they crumble. I just happened to be holding the pressure gauge that day. And in the end, respect isn't something you inherit. It's something you build brick by brick through honest work and decent treatment of others. Sometimes the handshake you refuse is the one that matters most. In business, the moment someone decides you're not worth their respect is the exact moment they've shown you they're not worth your investment.